In just a few weeks, UNH is set to announce their Q2 2025 earnings. And in my opinion, this is a very exciting time to be a shareholder because we are going to get some much needed insight to how the company is actually performing. So in today's video, we're going to go over what analysts are expecting from this announcement, as well as my opinion on what the company will actually announce based off what we have seen from the company's guidance and their previous earnings reports. And I'm also going to go over potential price targets for this stock and where I think it is headed over the next 1 to 2 years. So let's jump right into it. UNH is scheduled to announce their earnings before market open on July 29th. And what analysts are anticipating is revenue somewhere around $111 billion, as well as EPS. It kind of depends on the analyst, but a lot of analysts are in that range of anywhere between $4.90 and around $5 of non-GAAP EPS. So personally, I like looking at Yahoo Finance because you get a good range of revenue and EPS estimates. Here are the revenue estimates from their 18 analysts covering this stock. They have an average estimate of $111 billion, so in line with the number that we talked about previously. They have a low estimate of 110, so not very far below the average estimate, and a high estimate of $115 billion. So all of these are in a very tight range, which is very positive to see. That shows some consistency amongst analysts and what they actually expect out of this company. A year ago, the company put up around $99 billion of revenue. So if they put up this average estimate of $111 billion of revenue, that's around 13% growth year over year. And in my opinion, revenue of $111 billion is actually a little bit on the high side from analysts. And the reason for this is because every year we see a very clear step change as UNH increases their premiums. And then over the next 3 quarters, we see very consistent growth in terms of their top line revenue around that same number. So what we saw in 2023 was the company consistently grew their top line revenue by around 14 to 15%. In 2024, it was around 6 to really 9%. So here in 2025, I think that the company is actually going to grow their top line revenue by anywhere between 8 to maybe 10 to 11%. What that would equate to is somewhere closer on the low side to around $107 billion of revenue to maybe somewhere around $111 billion of revenue on the higher side. That would put a midpoint for their revenue of around $109 billion. I think that that is a lot more realistic expectation, so I wouldn't be surprised at all if UNH actually comes in and misses slightly on their top line numbers. However, investors are not going to be paying very much attention to top line numbers because the focus for UNH is on how they are performing on their bottom line. Right now, there are 20 analysts covering the stock on Yahoo Finance, and they have an average EPS estimate of $4.90. The low estimate is $3.92. The high estimate is $5.48. However, a year ago, UNH put up $6.80. So if they come through with $4.90 of EPS, that is around a 30% decline in earnings year over year. And the reason EPS is going to be the primary focus for investors is because of what happened during their Q1 earnings report, as well as immediately after the report. They actually dropped their guidance during their first quarter report to adjusted earnings of $26 to $26.50 of EPS for 2025. And then immediately after the earnings, they had a CEO change and actually pulled their full year guidance. And the reason they guided down as well as eventually pulled their guidance is due to higher utilization of medical coverage. Basically, patients going in and actually getting more care than they had previously anticipated. However, the company has stated that they believe that these are highly addressable factors that they will cover over the course of this year and especially address in 2026. So in my opinion, UNH pulled their guidance for 2025 not because the company is actually doing worse than they expected, but because of the CEO change that has taken place. A new CEO coming in is going to want to set their own expectations. They're going to want to temper what people are expecting from the company company so that they can outperform those expectations. And because of that, they would want to pull their guidance. And that, in my opinion, is what has happened here with UNH. However, I think that the company will actually put up non-GAAP EPS similar to what they previously expected, around that $26 mark. And we can use this $26 estimate and kind of project where UNH's EPS should come in over the next few quarters. Really, over the last few years, they have been able to keep their EPS in a very tight range. Other than these two one-off quarters, we can see that in 2023, they had a very tight range of EPS numbers that is consistent in 2022 and even for the most part in 2024. So what I mean by all of this is that over 2025, if UNH were able to put up $26 of non-GAAP EPS, that would mean that over the next three quarters, they would have to average $6.24 of EPS. In my opinion, 26 is probably actually realistic. However, the company could just maybe come in and underperform that slightly, still outperform the average of $22.15, and probably put up EPS anywhere between $23 and $24 in 2025. If they put up $23 of EPS in 2025, that would mean that over the next three quarters, they would have to average out their EPS to $5.25. And I would not be surprised at all if in this upcoming Q2 announcement, they come through with EPS closer to this $5.50, kind of somewhere between $5.15 and maybe $5.50 of EPS. And that would be a clear beat compared to analyst expectations. And in my opinion, if UNH comes through and put up $5.25 of EPS, I would not be surprised at all if the stock moves up fairly quickly to a price of around $325 per share. One thing that would create a lot of positivity going into this earnings announcement was if we saw insiders continue some of their buying. The last major buys that we saw were back in May, and this is when all those changes were going on with the company, and the stock price fell to around $250 per share. A lot of insiders came up and started buying up shares at around $280, $290 per share. So it seems like even right now at $300 per share, you're getting in at a price that is only slightly above some of these insiders. So at the end of the day, I think that right now UNH is very well priced to capitalize on a big move up after a positive earnings announcement. And this is especially true when you look at the valuation metrics around this company. Their forward P ratio is currently sitting at a 13.37 with a PEG ratio of 0.81. When you look at where the company is traded in the past, we can see that the high over the last year has been a forward P of an 18.76, which is almost a 30% premium compared to where the stock is currently trading at. And in my opinion, the reason that I actually own this company is because there is very limited downside, in my opinion, to actually owning the stock. We can see that even with underperformance of $19.58 of EPS and a PE ratio of 15 to 20, the stock should be trading somewhere between $290 per share and $390 per share. But I think what is more realistic, in my opinion, and these are my personal price targets for about a year from now, is that the company will put up somewhere around $23 to $24 of EPS. That would put the price, if it traded at an 18 PE ratio, somewhere between $400 and $450 per share. And that presents anywhere between 30 to 50% upside for the stock. And that's why I hold it in my portfolio. This is the YouTube portfolio, and it's currently sitting at a value of just under $70,000. And right now within this portfolio, I hold 5 shares of UNH with a total market value of around $1,500. Right now, we are down 3%. But as we work our way into this earnings announcement, I could easily see myself maybe doubling or even tripling the size of this position. Other than that, I do hold shares of Google, Supermicrocomputer, AMD, Microsoft, SoFi, Adobe, PayPal, Abercrombie & Fitch, Alibaba, Estee Lauder, United States Lime and Mineral, Zeta, and Hawkins. But keep in mind what I always say say is don't buy a company just because some random guy on YouTube talked about it. Make sure you are doing your own research and looking into companies that meet your risk tolerance as well as your time horizon. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, drop a like down below and subscribe for more like this one. And let me know in the comments section, do you hold UNH and what is your price target for a year from now? Thanks again and have a wonderful rest of your day.